Good evening, everybody. 1 second here while I get things set up. Just waiting for Mr. Keith Melcher to join, at which point I will add him to said video. Otherwise, welcome to the Magic Time Films live stream. I have one viewer so far. I'm willing to bet that's Mr. Keith Melcher. And I believe he should be getting added here very shortly. We shall see.
Yeah.
And there he is. Yay. There's Keith Melcher.
Right here. Live.
We have a whole one viewer thus far.
And that's me.
It is you. Hey, here's that guy.
Katie Melcher is watching.
Oh,
Hi,
is
Katie.
she? Hi, Katie.
And Charles. Hi, Charles. Hi, Kara.
Who all we got now?
My sister Katie. My buddy Charles. Kara, I'm related to.
Kara? Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I have joined the video as a guest. Ryan Brewer is watching. All the Warriors.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right on into it. This is the official Magic Time Films live stream where we talk about all things Magic Time Films. And yeah, and then you get to watch me chase away my cat because she likes to play with the cords. She's very notorious for that. As I almost knock over the camera right off the bat. First day of the Magic Time Films live stream. I'm really excited about this. We're doing a whole new format, hopefully. This is just sort of an experiment today to see how well it works. And hopefully we'll get some more people involved with the video itself. And that'll be awesome if we can. Because I'm pretty sure, hopefully, we can add more than one person to the video. It looks like it's got a little +2 thing here. So it looks like I might be able to add at least 2 more people to the video.
All right.
Which is great. It'll be good. Otherwise, tonight, I tried to convince Keith to do a movie review, but he was lazy and said, no, I didn't want to watch a movie or anything. So.
I've been working on our script all day, so.
Oh, is that what you've been doing?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
That's excuse then.
And I totally didn't wake up until noon today and started working on it then, so there.
Well, I hope you brought a beer to join me with, because I brought one.
1 second.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Here at Magic Time Films, we don't like look down on anybody who wants to drink and watch at the same time. Go for it. This is only my first one, by the way. I promise. But yes, we have a little bit of a topic to talk about tonight. I just wanted to kind of pick something out to start to kind of get the ball rolling. What do you got there?
Apricot Hefeweizen.
Apricot Hefeweizen.
Yeah.
I said a beer.
It's a fucking beer. Made by the Germans, the makers of all beer.
Yeah, that's right. I almost forgot about that. So tonight's topics, since we don't have a movie review, the big one that I picked out was funding for indie films, because it seems to be, it's an interesting topic to me, and it's one that I would definitely like to get more insights from a lot of different people, if we could. Hi, Randy. Are you sure that's a beer? Randy says. I'm going to assume he's talking to you.
Yeah. It's a beer. Just cool your jets. It's a beer.
Yeah, sure it is, buddy. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about funding, about movie funding, about film funding, and some of the issues that come from trying to obtain funding. Love you, bro. And then other than that, I did want to actually touch on some of our projects here that are coming up in the very near future, some of the stuff that we're currently working on. And I'm going to probably do that right away. So the script that Keith mentioned he's working on, tell us a little bit more about that one, Keith.
All right, now the working title for it is Three Sisters, which it's kind of a slasher / pseudo vampire script where a bunch of teens, their van breaks down and they're brought to a house by a kind of creepy tow truck driver, and one thing leads to another, and they wind up being stalked to the house by a bunch of three sisters who may or may not be vampires.
By a bunch of three sisters.
That's not what I said. By three sisters.
Three sisters, yes, three sisters. It was a script that I had originally started working on a long time ago, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if I just kind of lost interest in it, or if it I don't know. I think I just got sidetracked with other projects personally, but Keith and I decided we wanted to work on a script together, and so we have two. We have two. We have that one, and we have Three Guys Walk Into a Bar.
Yes, the three.
The three.
Yeah.
We have a thing with three all of a sudden.
We were talking the other day, and it was like, well, when they ask us if that was a coincidence, we'd say, oh, yes, it's the Holy Trinity, if you will. The rule of three.
Yes, the rule of three is the Holy Trinity.
But no, we're just very unoriginal.
Yeah. It was just really, really weird timing, I guess. Who all do we got here? We got Randy, we got Katie. I'm assuming she's still here. It doesn't tell you who's viewing, which is sad. It makes me sad. It means I can't stalk all the people that came in for like 2 seconds and left.
Right. Oh, Keith and Ryan. Well, don't need to watch this.
So the first one, let's talk a little bit about Three Guys in a Bar first.
Three guys go into a bar. Three guys walk into a bar.
Three guys walk into a bar, yes. Since that was yours, that was your script.
I
you go ahead and take the reins on it.
What's that?
Go ahead and tell everybody what that's about.
Oh,
without
about three guys who walk into a bar.
There you go, folks.
Yeah.
Magic Time. Magic Time Films. That's why it's called Magic Time Films, because it's like magic when we get together and we stop making shit.
Yeah. Well, after they walk into a bar, shit basically goes wrong, and they find themselves in many misadventures involving the Russian mob, the Yakuza, and some torture porn, perhaps. I haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah.
But I had originally started writing that one, well, like your script. I had written it a few years ago, and I basically lost track of it, moved on to other things. And when you said you wanted to collaborate on a script, that was one of the ones I thought up first that we could work on together.
Yes. So now we're actually collaborating on two scripts, which is really awesome.
Yes.
It's fun to finally. I like being able to collaborate on them. It's been a while since we've done it. The last one we wrote was called Something, and that was before Bone Jangles, actually, that we wrote that. And then it just kind of got shelved, and now we're trying to do something with it.
Something.
Desperately.
With something.
Something with something.
Yes.
Randy says, that sounds like a good one. Can I be one of the three? You mean one of the three sisters?
No, I think he was talking about the three guys.
Oh, okay.
Because then he said, never mind torture porn. So that rules him. You can still be one of the three sisters,
that
though.
That one hasn't popped up on my screen yet.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one yet because I have two screens going on. I have my laptop down here so I can see the comments. Mm-hmm. But as usual, they're not popping up right away.
Yeah, I have they're showing up on my phone right away. So.
Well, I've got this little thing down here that says my live viewers, and so it's not showing me the comments anymore. Oh, there they go.
Yeah, and Randy just said, I do look good in heels. It's like, I bet you do.
I think the comments are trying to catch up now.
This is going swimmingly, by the way.
It is. It is going very swimmingly.
Yeah.
I really like the premise behind three guys walking to a bar.
Well, originally it was going to be they have like a choice of 3 different bars to go to, and it would be like 3 separate stories depending on which bar they go to. But I figure that's just going to be really confusing to write and for people to understand. So now it's going to be a much more linear story where they just go to 3 bars, one after the other.
Yes.
Your cat.
You're gonna have to put up with her. He's kind of a freak, just so you know, guy. She may end up accidentally being the most interesting thing in the show.
More than likely.
Yeah, I think it's weird how that sort of happens sometimes with the scripts that we work on, and how it, like I've never started writing a script that I was like, oh, I never want to work on this again.
Yeah.
I think anytime I've ever had even a remote feeling like that, it was usually within the first page.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but before I even sat down to write, I'm like, no, this is fucking stupid. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
Usually, if I get rolling on something, though, and I get about 10 or 20 pages into something, then it's, I don't know. I feel bad abandoning those projects, I guess. Jake Kiley is watching us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do the 4 rooms thing and have a different writer-director for each bar.
See, that was something I thought about, too. And that still could be something we could do with that.
Could be.
Yeah.
That's an idea we'll definitely probably toss around.
Mm-hmm.
I would want to find a unique way to do that. Like I like the anthology stories like that do a little so like 4 Rooms is one of my favorite movies. I love that movie.
I like that movie a lot more now that I've worked in a hotel for 15 plus years.
Yeah, you have a greater appreciation for it.
All true. Haven't found a dead hooker under a bed yet, but that'll happen one day.
I like how that's the part that hasn't happened yet, and not the getting sexed up by a coven of witches.
Oh, yeah, that hasn't happened either.
I would have thought that would have been number 1 on your list of things to have happen.
Well, have you seen some of our clientele there? I don't want to get sexed up by any of them people.
Well, I guess. I mean,
I'd rather have Bruce Willis have me cut off somebody's finger than that happen.
That would definitely make for an interesting evening, wouldn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
With 3 sisters, I wanted to do something that was a little different for the vampire story. So they're basically 3 mutants, so to speak. They've been experimented on, and that's why they're vampires. They're vampires of a sort. They require sustenance from blood. Let's just put it that way. And I don't know if I want to go much further into it beyond that.
No, that could be
giving stuff away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting into spoiler territory right there.
It's just describe like slasher / vampire movie, and that pretty much.
Yeah, slasher slash.
How many beers have you had tonight?
Slasher and vampire story.
There you
Let's
go.
put it that way.
Right.
Slasher slash is redundant. It sounds like I'm drunk when I'm saying it. Like everything that comes out of your mouth sounds like you're drunk.
Yeah, not going to deny that.
So those are the 2 projects, right? And we are still working on something as well as Dead End.
Mm-hmm.
Keep reassuring people that movie is coming out. I promise. That is happening. We've kind of kept running into some holdups here and there. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Holdups.
Holdups.
And it's sort of been preventing the movie from happening. However, that will likely be changing very soon. The main edit is pretty much almost done. Let's put it that way. Kristen has joined. Hello. Kristen.
Hello,
Kristen Keller. Hello. Welcome to the Magic Time Films stream. Yeah. Dead End is coming soon. Something we were supposed to film June this year. No. Though I at this point I'm not going to put a timestamp on it, but I am looking into doing a much bigger fundraising campaign than what we did before. Mm-hmm. And in this case, might shoot like a small portion of the film or something like that to use for the campaign.
Yeah.
That's my idea anyway.
There's a few scenes in it we can probably shoot now that we won't need the entire cast for, that we could probably do.
Yeah, I think there's some good stuff that we could fit in there. Mm-hmm. Probably none of the racy stuff right now.
Well, never mind. Why are we even doing this then? If we can't do that.
I don't know. But yeah, as far as something is concerned, that's kind of where it's sitting right now. It's not on the back burner. It's just kind of slowing down a little bit so we can gain our footing and get the movie in the right direction. Because the one thing I don't want to have happen is I don't want the movie to suck.
Yeah.
So, and that takes a lot of time and effort to make a movie that doesn't suck. Got it. So as far as projects are concerned, that's kind of where we're sitting. There might be a couple other short films somewhere along the way. We'll see what happens.
And then I got the Bone Jangles sequels at some point. Mm-hmm. I can't really talk much more about those, but they're in the works.
They are a thing.
Yes, out in the ether, happening, if it will.
Yes. Is it ether or aether?
It's ether.
Are you ether or aether?
What?
Nothing.
That's
Nothing
right.
At all.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into our main topic of discussion tonight, which is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, fundraising. It's a poignant topic considering what we were just talking about. Funding is probably one of the most integral parts of independent filmmaking. It's also the one part that tends to get overlooked, I think, because it's really difficult to secure funds. Far more difficult than it probably used to be. And that may seem strange to hear, living in this day and age of Kickstarter campaigns and Indiegogo and all the different sites out there that are designed solely for that purpose. But it's surprisingly difficult. I think Kickstarter and Indiegogo and the big sites have sort of lost their momentum, I think, as far as crowdfunding films are concerned. And I think that like just people in general aren't really interested in funding independent films. Have you ever done a GoFundMe campaign? Randy asks. Yes, we have. The problem with GoFundMe is that it's a little lesser known. It's lesser known, and so people don't use it very much. And the people that do use it, it tends to be more of a charitable cause site. Usually like for people that are fighting cancer or other diseases, or somebody's trying to raise money for a school or something like that. That tends to be what GoFundMe gets used for, which is fine. That's fine. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that GoFundMe's structure revolves around this sort of ongoing process, whereas like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, those campaigns, they have definitive ends to them. Mm-hmm. Your Kickstarter campaign will end eventually, and whether you got your funding or not, it'll just sort of cut off. But GoFundMe just kind of keeps going, and I think that kind of turns people off from GoFundMe as far as funding movies and stuff like that. But Kickstarter, I think, has just become so saturated, and it's starting to get to the point now where the only people who are using it are people who should technically already have the funds to make movies.
Like Rob Zombie on 31.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for the guy I'm not his banker. I don't know how much money is sitting in his bank account. For all I know, he's squandered all of his money on hookers and blow. I don't know. I mean, maybe the guy's not as rich as he should be for all the albums of music that he's made prior to the movies, as well as all the movies that he's made prior to 31.
Mhm.
But when you're a star and you're funding your movies on a Kickstarter campaign, I don't know. I think it turns a lot of people off.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's my opinion anyway. It's not that I like being able to say that I donated or contributed to the making of a Rob Zombie movie,
Yeah.
but at the same time, he could have pulled that out of his ass. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean that's the thing is it's weird because the motto has always been never use your own money
Uh-huh.
on your film. That's what they always say, and so it is. It's smart for him to just have other people fund the movie for him through Kickstarter campaigns and stuff like that. But I in this day and age, I think that old saying doesn't really apply as much anymore. Because you almost need it. Because, like I said, it's harder to secure funding, I think, than it used to be. And especially when you live in places like South Dakota, where there's not a huge pool of people to choose from. There's not a lot of people out there that are willing to do it. And most people around here, they're very modest people. They don't really care. Movies aren't their thing. At least that's the impression that I've been given over the years. But yeah. Thoughts, Keith?
I wanted my $50 back after I saw 31.
I didn't contribute to that one. I bought the movie, but
Yeah.
it's a good movie.
It's all right. It's better than Lords of Salem, but
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
he could have funded that movie with its Dracula money alone. So
yeah. He probably could have funded any of his movies with his Dracula money alone.
yeah.
Considering he uses basically the same actors in every movie.
Yeah. And they're just happy to work, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably are. And his wife, I mean, it's his wife. Does he pay her? Does he pay her at all?
No, but we pay for it, though.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. And then there's like the Veronica Mars thing. And I get it. There's a lot of projects on there, too, that people are just really excited about because they went away or something like that. Like, I don't know why there's not been ever a Firefly campaign, but whatever. We got Veronica Mars.
Woo!
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's I wonder if the time change screwed with some people because we don't have a lot of people watching right now.
Yeah.
We have all of 2.
But
big shout out. Who's still watching?
The time change, that was like 12 hours ago. You think they would have figured it out by now?
Well, you get some of those places they don't have the time change, like Arizona. It's still 6 o'clock there.
Right. Only us. Thanks a lot, farmers.
It doesn't really have much to do with the farmers anymore, actually.
Well, I'm going to blame them anyway.
Yeah, that's what most people
What have they ever done for anybody? Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. You rock. You rock, Randy, for being here.
Jake's still here, too, so good.
Oh, is he? Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Hey, hi. So that's our 2 people that are watching.
All right, awesome.
So yeah, I mean, let's get some more opinions rolling here, because I can't ramble on forever, and it is supposed to be a discussion.
And I'm not good on camera at all.
No, apparently you're not drunk enough is what the problem is.
Well, I'll fix that.
Let's fix that. Fucking only took you 2 sips the other night.
The other night. Maybe I had other things in my system.
Yeah, I'm sure you built up your tolerance a lot since then.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that I'm most concerned about is what are some ideas for funding? What are other ways that indie filmmakers, especially small time indie filmmakers who are living in small town South Dakota, like us, where does one find the money to do it? Justin Gausman.
It's about time.
I know. Fuck. Show started
number one
20 minutes ago, Justin. 20 minutes ago.
Prostitution, yes.
Yes. What?
Well, that's what Randy said to fund the movie, prostitution.
Oh, prostitution.
But as an overall concept, I'm all for it.
The hell, man? What? Don't yell at me. Don't yell at me. I'm going to add you to the video. If I can.
Yeah, and take the pressure off of Keith. He'll do that.
Oh, it says you can't join at this time. Well, what the hell?
I can log off and then he can join.
Dina's watching too. Ah, is that why? I'm touching my screen with my middle finger. I'm flipping off the entire world right now. Oh, see, that was the experiment, though.
Yeah.
Was to see if we could have more than 2 people talking at a time. But we can have Keith drop out too and add you in.
Yeah, I've contributed enough to this conversation as it is anyway. So.
All right. Well, here we're gonna bring Justin into the conversation.
Okay. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
We are adding Justin into the conversation, kicking Keith out of here for now. But he'll be back. He better be back. There's Justin.
Howdy.
How's it going, sir?
Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the Magic Time Films live stream.
Welcome.
The official one.
How's
The
it
night.
going?
What was that?
How's it going?
It's going. So far, so good.
Sweet. There's
A
Dina.
worthwhile experiment. Yes, it is a worthwhile experiment. Hi, Dina. So tonight, I don't know if you caught any of the earlier discussion at
Yeah.
all.
I caught where you were going to have some discussion about indie filmmakers and stuff.
Yes. Well, tonight we're talking about indie film funding. Ways
Yes.
of securing
Always a
that funding.
challenge.
Yes. I just kind of went off about the Kickstarter Indiegogo route and how it's kind of tapered off significantly over the years.
Yeah.
Not as viable a source as it used to be.
Yeah, unless you've got a big... It's ironic because it was intended for truly independent, but now you really can't do it unless you have a big IP.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point that I was making earlier too, because we got to talking about Rob Zombie's 31 and how that movie was funded almost entirely through Kickstarter. And
Right.
Yeah, and I guess the point that I was making wasn't really so much that he could afford to do it himself, because he probably could.
Right.
He probably has the money to afford that movie all on his own. But the fact that you have to be somebody like Rob Zombie now just to get anywhere with those.
To even register on like the trending Kickstarters.
Yeah, and I don't even think Kickstarter. Even if you weren't Rob Zombie, I think Kickstarter still requires you've got to have like 3/4 of your budget met or something like that before they'll start featuring you in the trending area. And so I mean, so like you have to have like a famous person already on board in order for it to even
Pretty much
function. And and I know a lot of people were also getting kind of tired of that too, where And no offense to anybody in particular, but a lot of people are getting tired of funding these movies and being told, such and such big name actor is going to be in the movie, and then they're in the movie for like 5 seconds, and they get top billing, and people are like, why did we pay for this guy to be in this movie for 5 seconds? And people get annoyed with that.
To be fair, we were sold The Force Awakens with Mark Hamill getting second billing behind Harrison Ford, and he was in there for 30 seconds?
Not even 30 seconds. I don't even think it was. I don't even think it was half a minute.
Yeah.
His total screen time. It might have been 30 seconds, but I think that's still pushing it, barely at the very least. But
Yeah.
it does kind of seem like, that just tends to happen more often
Right.
than not. Where in a mainstream movie, I mean, let's be honest. They could give Mark Hamill top billing all they want. Everybody was more concerned about Harrison Ford. So maybe Keith. I don't know.
Hey, he was in there
Like
quite a bit.
like I said, no offense. Like, I understand. Like, and having that star power does help to a degree. But I know for a fact that a lot of people complain about that. That's a huge complaint from people who fund those kind of things. I see it on Reddit. I see it in comments all the time on movies. I see it on like the sites that I go to in their forums, where they'll review a movie, like an indie movie, and below right there in the comments, almost one of the first top comments I see is, "Oh, look at that, another actor who was only in there for 10 seconds." And
Well,
yeah.
From what I've seen, that's not as big of an issue with, I think, a lot of people as not getting the actual rewards that they were promised. Ends
That
up
too.
being a big thing, because a lot of people who do Kickstarters, not even filmmakers, but in general, don't factor the costs of those things and mailing into their budget, and what they're asking for. So they end up promising way more than they can deliver. And still have money left over to make the thing they're trying to make.
Yeah. Well, and it's true. Like, we had that problem in the past too, where we didn't quite figure that into our budget for one of the thing ended up not getting fully funded anyway. I don't think we got enough money for it to make a big difference. So, but we had that problem where we still had certain goals that we had, perks that we had to provide for people, but we didn't get enough money from the campaign to be able to afford to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely a combination of things, but I know that that's just one of the things that people tend to complain about.
Sure.
And I would, gladly give any amount of money to be able to work with Reggie Bannister. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like I said, it's no offense to anybody. And again, I do get it. I understand why they do it. Having that star power does make a difference in the long run. But, I think it's starting to wear thin, on top of everything else that's happening with the crowdfunding campaigns. That's not to say that I would ever stop doing it, crowdfunding campaigns. But but I would like to see, I guess, a shift where it goes back to focusing on the indie filmmaker again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of tough, because the whole Kickstarter and Indiegogo thing just kind of, I mean, it had its kind of blaze of glory, and then it was over. Even at its height, I mean, it was rare for truly independent filmmakers and musicians to succeed on there in the same way. And of course, again, people get burned by, Kickstarters or Indiegogos that don't get fulfilled, or they meet their goal and they get all the money that they say they're going to need. Well, then it turns out that there's all these other problems with, like, for instance, there was a Star Wars or Star Trek fan film that got completely funded. And then it turned out, I mean, aside from the fact that it was already questionable that they were using intellectual property they didn't own, but they were more funding their studio as opposed to funding the film itself. And people got burned on that. And eventually the film did come out, but people were upset about the fact that the money was not being used the way that they thought. Even if you do it transparently, the perception, I mean, PR is such a big thing for so many people. So guys like that ruin it for, kind of the smaller fry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that is definitely a huge factor on it.
Yeah.
I would probably even go so far as to say that the lack of perk follow through is probably one of the biggest ones, if not the biggest one.
Yeah.
It definitely holds a large enough chunk. But I still think, you would think too, that with so many people that complain about how Hollywood things are, how they hate the way Hollywood does things. You would think
nothing. There's nothing original anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you'd think they'd be more apt to support those indie films,
but they say that, but then they don't even go out and support like the kind of, not AAA, but kind of AA productions. Your stuff that you see at like the Academy Awards, like your Fox Searchlight type stuff. Those subsidiary companies that are doing the more artistic, more kind of original concepts. People don't go to see those in theaters, and to be fair, the flip side of that is that the theater going experience has totally shifted, and I mean it's not worth spending the money hardly to go see those types of movies when you can get as good of experiences online at home, because remember, you're also competing with basically 100 years of cinema available for streaming.
Yeah. Well, it was available for streaming. We're seeing kind of a big shift away from that. Netflix has dumped so much money into original content that they're actually losing properties now,
Right.
and not having as much of a selection to offer as far as the older.
But even then, if you compare, like, I rented and watched Citizen Kane, and it was $4 or $5 versus going to the movie theater, which, even the local theater here, they do their best to stay as affordable as possible. And it's still like, $7, $8 plus. Of course, you're going to get snacks, you're going to get drinks and everything as part of the experience of going to the cinema. And it is sad that that the field has changed in such a way. So, yeah. I don't know.
We actually forgot to do. We forgot to give you a proper introduction, since this is the Magic Time Films live stream.
Oh, yeah.
Here before, so I should probably give Justin a proper introduction here. Justin is also a fellow filmmaker. We have collaborated together on projects in the past as well, and hopefully more projects in the future. Why don't you go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself, Justin, so that everybody knows who you are.
Well, I am the writer director of Never Been to Graceland, which this guy was the director of photography, and he played an Elvis impersonator. And then I also, what's that?
Wendy just joined us, like just now.
Hey, Wendy!
Very good timing.
She was also in the movie. She played one. Yeah. She played the crazy Elvis fan.
Yeah.
And then I'm also the host of TCB Cast, an unofficial Elvis Presley fan podcast. And I'm also the sitting president of Southern Hills Community Theater, having taken over from Betsy Savage. And so, yeah, I wear all kinds of hats, even though I'm not wearing a hat right now. It's a metaphoric hat.
I like the metaphoric hat.
Yeah.
If you have says hello. Yay, Justin.
Hey. But
Saturdays.
Yeah, Charlene, how's it going? But anyway, so what were we talking about? We were talking about the field of movies now, how the theatrical experience has shifted.
Yes. The primary topic being fundraising, of course. But
yeah, fundraising. So alternatively, where do we see independent film? Like, where do you see, I guess you're probably leading the discussion, but that would be my question, is where do you see the independent film field shifting to make it still sustainable?
Well, that's the thing. I was just reading tonight. I was reading a bunch of articles, and it kind of seems like the common consensus right now is that um, there's no real way. Basically, it's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to find funding nowadays is because it's become even more difficult for independent films to make money.
Right.
It's become harder to get that investment back. So it's harder to find investors, because there's no guarantee of return.
Right.
Not that there ever really was to begin with. I mean, film is always a gamble. That's just kind of how it works. But it seems like, I guess, to potential investors, that's how the market has gone, that it's worse now than it was before as far as getting the return on their money. So it makes sense that a lot of people would be reluctant to want to do anything like that.
Do you think? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know if I see it. I do think that it will eventually improve. How it's going to improve, I couldn't be too sure. I know that. Where can we see Never Been to Graceland? It's on Amazon or YouTube.
Yes, Amazon or YouTube, or if you want to quickly just pop over, it's neverbeentograceland.com. The YouTube video is embedded there. And it will also be screening at the Black Hills Film Festival in April here in South Dakota. So
Wendy just pointed that out.
Yes.
What was I talking about? I can't remember. I lost my train of thought.
Things getting better for funding.
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to get better. I'm just not entirely sure how. I think that with a bigger push to streaming video and video on demand, I think that's going to be it. Like some of the articles I was reading, you can tell they were dated because they were talking about people making money off of Netflix. No.
So I guess here's my 2 cents. Because right now, and this is just the last 20 years, all industries have been fighting the tide of digital streaming and digital downloads, because it does change the face of the media industry at large, whether that's books, whether that's audiobooks, whether that's movies, whether that's music. It affects them all. And same with video games. And I think we're going to see a shift. It's interesting to where you look at people on YouTube now. They become sponsored channels, much in the same way that TV in the 50s was sponsored by their businesses that were sponsoring that programming. I think we're going to see more of that. And of course, obviously, up till present day, that's still the case with television. But I think it's going to... I think we're going to keep going down that path where we're going to have to start, for independent filmmakers, you almost have to have a business sponsor or a sponsor to plug, as opposed to having investors in the same way that it has traditionally been done. And then, of course, you're going to end up having to go the route of having fan support, which is basically they're buying into your channel or your film on a kind of recurring basis. It's almost like they talk about video games as a service. And I think we're going to start shifting to where it's going to be films as a service. Even more so than Netflix and Amazon. I think we're going to start seeing more independent filmmakers go down the route of where they're providing the service of videos and films as opposed to one-off videos that they can sell.
Mm-hmm.
Because people will be... Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying that's a very interesting take on it. So, like, basically what you're saying is that I think that's actually, it's really interesting because essentially what it is we're kind of evolving, what you think anyway is happening is we're sort of evolving towards a sort of micro Hollywood system where instead of Hollywood having all the advertisers, the individual now has the advertisers and the fan support.
Yep.
On top of it. So it ends up becoming it's sort of taking video on demand to a whole other level.
Yep.
I guess.
And to be fair, some YouTubers out there are already kind of doing that. They do have, like, you have YouTubers that not only have like merch available to buy of like catchphrases and memes and things like that from their shows, but then they also have Patreons. They also have other things like that to have their fans directly provide them what they feel is appropriate or what those fans can afford. Because rather than like historically, you would go buy a ticket or you would go buy a DVD and it would be a set price. Like your DVD is always going to be $19.99 or your movie ticket's always going to be $10. And now you might have one person who decides that they only want to throw $2 at it, and you have another person who might be willing to throw down 100. And it's just going to be a matter of what value they think they're getting out of what content is being produced. And I think it's already where the larger content providers are shifting, and it's only a matter of time before the truly independent ones start going down that route as well.
Right. And I think you're very right. Actually, I think that's there. We have our own Patreon for Magic Time Films. I just posted a link there for everybody if you're interested in checking it out.
Donate.
What was that?
I said donate.
Donate. Yes, donate. You can subscribe for as little as $1.
Yes.
$1.
Uno.
And I definitely encourage that. Actually, I think in many ways, I think fan supported almost sort of feels like that's where it should have been anyway.
Yeah.
Because I like fan supported for a variety of different reasons. One of them being that it's your fan base. You know, it's your fan base, and they're the ones who are going to be contributing. They're the ones who are going to be influencing, and they're the ones that you want to influence in return because they're your fans and you love them, and we love them, and what better way to show that you love them than by giving them something that they want, you know? But at the same time, being able to get new people in, I think is going to be, that's really where the trick is getting new people to come.
But you look at an industry that's been around like literature, that's been around for literally hundreds of years, and compared to cinema, I mean, cinema is like still in its infancy compared to literature. And that's one thing that I think a lot of writers have struggled with, especially in the last 20, 30 years as kind of computers and self-publishing have kind of democratized the writing process and the publishing process. You still have those big publishing companies that have that can throw the marketing money behind a writer and can give them advances and do everything traditionally, but then you have other people who can self-publish and can create their own kind of base of fans that will support them that way. And I think we're going to see something very similar with truly independent films, but and we do have to remember that we only remember the ones that actually make it. Like there are so many film production companies, even ones that we saw, like movies that we saw when we were kids, that we remember, that a lot of them aren't around anymore. Like maybe they were bought out by, you know, Disney or Fox or one of the bigger corporate companies, but a lot of times they either go out of business after making 2 or 3 films, and then those people go on to different projects, or they join different companies, or it's a very fluid industry. And that's kind of going to be important to remember as well for indie filmmakers, is that just because you don't necessarily succeed in doing this thing doesn't mean you won't succeed on your like next try, but maybe from like a different angle. And I guess that's just historically been a thing. I mean, just keep persisting on whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm trying to, as soon as you mentioned it, I started thinking, I was like, which company was it that I saw not too long ago that I hadn't heard from in years?
Yeah.
And I want to say it was Orion Pictures.
Ah, yeah.
Like, I don't know what movie it was, but it was a fairly recent film that came out, and the Orion Films logo came up, and I was like, "What the hell?"
I haven't heard from
You guys
them
are
in
even
forever.
they're still around. I didn't
Yeah.
even know they still made movies. I haven't seen that logo since I was like a teenager, a young teenager. Hell, I think the last Orion Pictures movie I saw was, I don't know, maybe one of the Predator movies.
Yeah.
I want to say the second one, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even remember. That's how old that is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty crazy.
Well, this is a totally new thing too, because again, we're talking about companies, so we're talking about, I mean, full-fledged companies with actual structure. And indie filmmaking is really, I mean, it's really new in the sense that like anybody can kind of pick up and do it. I mean, yes, there have always been kind of independent films or ones, you know, not associated with the studios, but it's really only been, I want to say, the last 20 years. I mean, of course, you have, you know, your one-offs like Kevin Smith and stuff back into the 90s and 80s. But those are few and far between compared to what you can find today. So yeah, it's definitely interesting because it's totally new, and yeah, it's interesting to think about where it's going to go from here, especially when even the big studios are kind of struggling to find where they're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be, in fact, this year could be a really big year for deciding the future of a lot of movie studios. In fact, it's like, I think it was George Lucas and Steven Spielberg predicted that this year was going to be the big burst of the bubble for Hollywood because there's so many blockbusters coming out this year, and so much money gets dumped into these movies to the point where they literally don't make a profit off them anymore.
No,
the profit
they can't.
either overseas when they do the international release or on the merchandise. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Disney and Marvel was such a perfect combination, because the merchandise is built right in.
And Disney and Star Wars.
Yeah, and Disney and Star Wars. It's also a perfect match. Yeah, so they've got that going for them really, really strong right now, and I think the other movie studios are starting to realize that they can't support, or going to realize at the very least eventually, that they can't support that many blockbusters if they don't have that same, I guess, merchandising clout as Disney does, you know. And now that Disney owns Fox as well, I mean, they're very quickly running out of companies that can compete with Disney as far as blockbusters are concerned.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, we lost Fox, so that leaves us with what, Universal and Paramount.
Yeah,
and then we start getting some of the smaller
Warner
companies.
Brothers.
Yeah, Warner Brothers we still have. Although, I mean, the way things are going with Warner Brothers and DC movies, yeah. But then, then you kind of go down into your slightly smaller companies like your New Line Cinema and your Lionsgate and stuff like that, and then you start getting into your, the quote unquote independent studios, which are still owned by the big studios, by the way. I don't know how many people actually know that.
Yeah,
they still own those. Those are their safety nets. That's where they do all the independent movies, so that they don't have to worry about dumping tons of money into them.
Independent.
Yeah, independent movies. I was reading another article earlier today, and it kind of made me chuckle because they were making a big deal about how Manchester by the Sea was an independent film from Fox Searchlight or whatever it was, and whatever company it was.
Yeah,
it's still Fox.
Yeah, if you're owned by if your company is owned by a major corporation, you're not independent.
Yes. New Line is owned by Warner Brothers, so according to Keith.
Yeah.
So that kind of eliminates that. So yeah, that's the other thing, is that the companies are like, you don't even know who owns who anymore.
Yeah.
Or I mean, basically they just kind of keep them around for brand recognition.
Well, I mean, and I mean, I was looking the other day. I was just doing some research, and I was looking at Touchstone Pictures, which was a subsidiary of Disney, and I mean, basically no longer exists. But they almost entirely existed on relying on the fact that people wouldn't realize that they were owned by Disney, because they did do more adult type films.
Mhm.
And so you get these companies where people think that they're separate, but they're actually subsidiaries of these larger corporations.
Yeah. I think that's where it gets lost with the independent studios, though, because they tout them as being so independent that
Mm-hmm.
they really try to build that up. They make a big deal
Right.
like, oh, Manchester by this year, or what other movie it was like, it did great at Sundance. Who cares? That's all. Sundance is basically all Hollywood independent films anyway nowadays. It's
Yeah.
not. I mean, it's very rare that there's a movie in Sundance that does very well that wasn't funded or backed by some major studio in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Or at least some major, corporation. Because
Yeah.
Amazon is one they're not necessarily associated with any other major studio, but they are quickly becoming their own.
Mm-hmm. Which is good.
Well, yeah.
I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because I like the idea that these companies are trying to stay independent.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what gets me excited about it. It's not so much like Amazon. They've got their issues, of course. I mean,
Right.
there's certain I'm not a big fan of, but at the same time, the fact that they can sit back and say, well, we are making actual independent movies because we are completely independent from Hollywood. And I mean, and Amazon too, from a business standpoint, the way they do things since they first started, they've almost never turned an actual profit.
Yeah.
Most of the profit gets put retroactively right back into the company. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I kind of admire Amazon on that level, and I admire the fact that they're currently, anyway, independent from the big studios.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the reasons why I like the idea of going through Amazon at some point in time.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that eventually they won't be. Because if they're not making any profit,
right.
There's always that possibility that, fucking Disney will step right in and be like, hey, let's buy Amazon too. Why not?
Yeah.
You never know what'll happen.
Yeah. So what else is on the docket for discussion?
Well, it was mostly just the funding. We were talking about projects earlier, what projects we were working on. Why don't you tell some of the projects that you're working on right now, actually?
Working on Brochet.
Nice.
That's about it.
Did you see that video I tagged you in?
What's that?
I tagged you in a video not too long ago that somebody had posted it. That was it.
I'll have to look and see. I don't think I saw. I'll have to check that out. I don't remember seeing myself get tagged in anything of yours. So I'll have to go back through and look. But yeah, so
I thought I tagged you in.
Still hashing out kind of the story of Brochet. Which for folks who don't know is going to be a comedy about a guy who ends up learning how to crochet from his grandma. Yeah, Keith knows. But it's going to have all kinds of social commentary, and it'll be interesting and funny, I hope. What else have I been working on? That's kind of it. Like I've really, because I've got the community theater going on as well, so that's been taking up a good chunk of my brain space.
Yeah.
I would like to. Oh, go ahead.
I just said that makes sense.
Yeah. There's a couple other random ideas that I have, but nothing I'm as committed to at the moment. There are some shorts that I want to do, but they're still not fully fleshed out either. What are you working on?
Well, like we mentioned earlier in the show, Keith and I are collaborating on 2 scripts: Three Sisters and Three Guys Walk Into a Bar. And then we have Something, the feature film that we're still trying to get the ball rolling on. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about funding, because that's an issue for some.
Right.
I have a couple of short films I'm working on. I have a couple of other scripts that I'm working on as well. One that you yourself have read a portion of anyway.
Yes. Yeah, that one was actually really funny.
Which has now been retitled Gary's Bad Breakup.
Nice.
And that's the current working title now. I don't know if I'm still going to stick with that title. There's a part of me that almost feels like I want to change that. That was the big one that we're going to pose to the audience, though. Not for Gary's Bad Breakup, but for Three Sisters, because Keith is not fond of the title. It's a horror movie, and he thinks it sounds like the title for a Hallmark Channel movie. And, I think the title's all right. I'm not married to it, though, and he seems pretty adamant about changing it. So we were going to pose the question to the audience based on what we had told everybody about the script and its plot. Which, to reemphasize, it's kind of a slasher Lifetime movie. Sorry, a Lifetime movie. But it's a slasher meets vampire movie, and
sorry, I'm listening. I was trying to flip. I've got it plugged in, but the plug is on this side, but the actual thing I'm plugged into is on that side. So sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm with you. So it's about this group of kids who end up getting tricked into coming to this house out in the middle of nowhere after their van breaks down. The creepy tow truck driver takes them out to his creepy house and introduces him. They get a sort of roundabout way introduced to his three sisters, who are sort of mutant vampires who were experimented on as children, and that's why they're vampires. They're not the supernatural vampires, the traditional supernatural vampires.
Okay.
But and I guess one of the other details I can actually talk about is that they use psychedelic drugs to both weaken as well as overemphasize their mutations and kind of manipulate their victims.
Okay.
So I add to a nice little. It'll add some interesting flavor, I think, to the overall script and what we can do with it. Anyway, and the idea. So that's the basic premise of the film.
Nice.
And like I said, Keith is not particularly fond of the title. And I think
of course he's not.
Kind of on the nose sort of thing, but it's not. I'm not, like I said, I'm not married to it. So we were going to pose the question to everybody else: what do you think would be a good title for a script of that sort?
Yeah. Here's hope they give an answer. Give us an answer.
What was that?
I said, give us an answer, folks.
Yes, give us an answer. All two people that are watching.
Ooh, two.
I never know whether or not to trust that number.
Yeah, it's always, sometimes it shows 2, but there's 10. Sometimes it shows 10 and there's 2. So
yeah.
We'll see.
Which is really weird. It says I have it on 2 monitors right now, and it says 2 on both. And I know one of them's Keith. So at least one of them is Keith. And the other one could actually be me, since I'm technically watching it on another monitor right now.
Well, but if you're logged into your account, it shouldn't count. Unless you have a second account.
This could be true. Titles are hard.
Man, I don't know. Well,
and titles are hard. I'm apt to agree with you, sir. I always have like the worst time with titles anymore, especially more recent years. I often come up with the idea and the script first and start writing, and I just kind of have like a working title. The Gary's Bad Breakup one, the original working title was Waking Up in Darkness, which makes it sound like a much darker movie than it actually is.
Although that could be an interesting twist, though.
It could be, but I still think that it would give the audience the wrong impression going into it.
Yeah.
You know, like if you didn't see any trailers or something like that, if you just walked up to a movie theater and you're like, oh hey, Waking Up in Darkness, that sounds interesting. It almost sounds like dark indie horror to me, and it's not. So not even close. Great band name. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, that's
either a great band name or a good first album name or second album if you decide to go the self-title route.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, I mean, I struggle with titles all the time, and I don't know why lately it's been even harder. But
Hmm.
I'm assuming it's just because I've got so many ideas going on all at once that I never know what to call anything.
That's fair.
Yes.
So let's see what else. Yeah, that's kind of all I had to chip in on the finances and stuff like that.
Well, that's
I mean,
cool.
other than the other idea that you and I talked about that I think would be an interesting idea to explore, and I don't know how much I want to talk about it, but the idea of like community film, but I'll just kind of leave it there. And that's not something necessarily for an indie filmmaker to kind of necessarily make their mark and have it's difficult to explain how that would work, and people like I could see, I guess in the same way that like community theater works, you have actors that would come up kind of through the ranks and then maybe they'd go into professional, but yeah, that's kind of what we had talked about. Gosh, was that like a year and a half ago we started talking about that idea?
Was that a year and a half ago? I thought that was I thought it was more recent than that.
It could have been more recently. It's been a long like couple years.
You're telling me. It's been a really long couple of years for this guy.
Right?
Yeah. I want to say that was wasn't that because we were talking about it in Rapid City.
Yeah.
And we're standing outside talking.
Yeah, we were at the mall. But yeah, that's one of those ideas I think, much like drama, or even music, rather than going the route of, everyone having their own channel and everyone having their own basically company, I think, and that may be a way that it goes, is that it may become so democratized that it gets to the point where you have a communal group of people making films, and not necessarily making money off of them, but at least possibly, maybe making their investment back. But it would be very low budget, and you would be largely like community theater. It'd be largely voluntary. So all of your people participating would be, volunteers. And then you would try to make back, however. I don't know. I haven't hashed out all the details of how that would work, but it's certainly an interesting concept.
I think it's an interesting one. I remember the conversation. There was a lot to it, though. I do remember there was a lot more to it than that, which is, I understand not wanting to go into the details of. And I think it's a great idea, but I think in the long run, I don't know if that's something that I'd want to get into on this episode, but maybe down the line we'll get into it.
Yeah.
A little more about the idea and concept of making money off of your work, I guess. Right. It does kind of fit into the idea of funding, but I feel like that could be a whole other topic in and of itself.
Well, but it's totally related to funding, because it
is.
If you're looking for investors, they have to know that they're getting a return on that investment, or that that they know that money is at least going to be well spent, and that people are going to enjoy it. Like with our community theater, we have business sponsors that actually sponsor our shows and our season. And we're grateful to them for helping support, because what that does is that helps offset our production costs. And I'm sure this is the way with a lot of theaters around the country, not just community theaters, but professional theaters. They have their business sponsors or individual sponsors. And I think maybe that's a route that film could go down, because you get people who are invested in it in such a way that they're just doing it for the good of kind of the artistic health of a community or a region.
Yeah, just supporting the arts in general.
Yeah. And I think that's that. I think film is still, there's still this kind of people think that film is more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's higher. People think it's more elite, I guess, than other forms of art. that it's not something that can be democratized in the same way, in part because it is such a hugely collaborative art form. But I think that and video games are the two things that in the future we'll start seeing people and even like local organizations and governments invest in film and in video games in the same way that they do in, paintings and sculptures and music.
Right. And I guess if we do want to get into it, so I mean that's looking at it from sort of the investor's perspective, and
right.
I'm more like in terms of the artists themselves.
Right. And that would be that would be something for that's kind of almost going down the route of that's something for indie filmmakers to look at. Can you find business sponsors as opposed to investors, individual investors or companies? Could you find businesses that you could work some sort of arrangement where you shoot in their location, you give them, give somebody from the company a walk-on role or a role in the background or something, some sort of reciprocal agreement or something, because that's what a lot of other, kind of nonprofit organizations do. If you're just trying to get the art made, you can't do it without having some sort of money to do it with, or some sort of resources. Right. Like you can make, you and I have made movies from literally nothing.
Yes.
But manpower, time, and energy. With the gracious help of friends, volunteers, making that happen. But not really necessarily having much in the way of actual dollars to throw at it. But I think that's something for maybe filmmakers to explore that they might not have thought about, is maybe local business sponsors or regional business sponsors. If they've got a project that they can, again, much like you would with an investor, show that there's going to be a return. And the same thing with Kickstarter. I mean, you do have to give them, when you do your Kickstarter, you have to give a pitch and say, this is what you're going to get out of it. This is why. I mean, you can make a video saying, oh, I had this great idea and I've been wanting to make this project my whole life. But everybody's got one of those. It's a matter of sitting down and saying, this is why this needs to be made, and here's how you're going to benefit from it. And that may be literally as simple as you're going to laugh for 2 hours, or you're going to sit down and enjoy it. But they have to know that they're getting something out of it.
Right. And I think the thing that I think I'm most focused on right now is, so like we've already seen a huge shift in like the music industry and how difficult it is for the artists nowadays to make money, to support themselves with their art, to be able to pay their bills, to make a living. And it almost kind of feels like, how do I want to explain this? I want to make sure I'm explaining this correctly. Like if you're a professional in the big industry, my basic understanding is that there's just no money there anymore. At least not like there used to be. But if you're an independent artist, there's even less money because of how things work nowadays.
Right.
And I'm curious how one might think that's going to carry over into other mediums like film. Like, are we getting to a point now where artists are just never going to be able to support themselves with their art? Or is there going to be a turnaround in that area? Is that something that can happen? I mean, obviously it can happen. There are people who do it, but it seems like once that, like YouTube being a very good example, actually, it's like if you weren't there from the very beginning, and
it's tougher to break into it.
It's a lot tougher, especially recently. But yeah, it's so much harder to break into that industry and actually make money off of it.
Well, but even then, there's really not any money in YouTube or a lot of those digital streaming sites or video streaming sites, because they're changing. Even like Facebook, they're changing their structure. I mean, there was never any money in YouTube. I mean, YouTube is bleeding money because they were under fire from Hollywood for people uploading, basically free content of, like professionally produced stuff, as well as everything everyone else has been doing, and then they monetized it for normal people, and then they had to start paying out. So now they've structured it to where you have to meet certain criteria to be able to earn anything. You have to have a certain number of likes or subscribers. You have to have a certain number of hours watched in a month or a year or whatever. So it's not like that's, I mean, it's going to be really hard for people to break into that now, in a way that it hasn't been for, over a decade.
Yeah. Which I don't know how I feel about that. I think that they've been putting a lot of restrictions in place pretty much since the very beginning. Since
Right.
YouTube really took off, there's like slowly but surely over the years, one restriction after the next has been added, or certain. I dare say restrictions, let alone, or I guess criteria, has
But
changed.
here's a question for you, just something to chew on.
Hmm.
I don't think YouTube was ever intended to be something that people could go on and make money on.
No, that's not how it started even. YouTube, I mean, I'm trying to remember. I actually just read this the other day, how YouTube started. And it was supposed to be, oh God, what was that? So I don't know. I don't even remember.
It's literally,
it was supposed to be just like really short.
Yeah,
video.
people just sharing short, funny clips, videos, interesting things about themselves or interesting things happening in their world. Sometimes it would be funny, sometimes it'd be sad. I mean that, and that, I mean, fundamentally that's still there, but I think it's kind of a good thing to see it shifting, at least in a way, away from where it had been going, where they were just giving out money to people who were popular, because what that did was it started changing YouTube's landscape to where, like we had been talking about, you had channels that were run more like individual, like TV channels.
Now I remember what it is now.
Yeah.
I just brought up the article. It started as a dating site. It was YouTube was created by Chad Hurley, Steve Chen, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, Jawad Karim. The logo, website, domain, and trademark for YouTube were registered on 14th February 2005 with the original idea for it to be an online dating website. Users would be able to upload videos of them introducing themselves and saying what they were interested in, but the idea didn't take off, and the co-founders soon pivoted YouTube to become a more general video sharing site. So, yeah, it was supposed to be a dating site. That's I knew it was something weird, and I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah.
I had to look it up really quickly.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
But it's definitely it's.
Hello, Patty.
Hey. Sorry she's late.
Yes. How dare you be late? Yeah, that's kind of weird to me, I guess, like just to think. So yeah, it was like a video dating service, essentially.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
But yeah, I do wonder, because people have been talking for several years now about what would it take for there to be an alternative to YouTube that is less driven by kind of the top content providers.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the major Hollywood studios and the major TV networks and stuff, they all have kind of taken over YouTube.
Yeah.
And same with the record companies. I mean, Vivo, you look at the trending videos every week and there's always music videos on there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it kind of does remove YouTube from kind of its original, not necessarily intended purpose, but what was kind of envisioned at the time by the public at large, where it was just kind of for anyone and everyone and not for kind of a select few.
Yeah, the elitist few.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and what I was like it's kind of like what I was saying earlier with YouTube. I don't remember if that was between you and me now, or if that was between me and Keith. I was talking about it, and YouTube has gotten to a point like, oh no, it was between me and you, where I said, if you weren't really there in the beginning, then you couldn't really get into it. It's a lot harder to build up your audience. It's a lot harder to get your subscriber base up, and there is money to be made in YouTube, but you have to be extremely popular in order to do it.
Yeah.
There's more than enough success stories out there, but like I said, if you weren't there from the very beginning, the chances of reaching that level now are not impossible, but highly unlikely.
Right.
And a lot of that too, I think, is because the viewership has changed a little bit as well.
Oh yeah.
People have sort of lost interest in the kind of videos that used to be getting posted, and the content of YouTube itself has just sort of changed.
Yeah.
Where it used to be a little more random, now it's a little more refined, and we're starting to see a heavier emphasis on the bigger channels. Well, and YouTube itself has started to try to put the emphasis on those bigger channels.
Yep. You have TV channels, music, streaming, and basically video game streaming. Live streaming are the three big factors that changed YouTube. So, for instance, the late night TV shows all post chunks of their show on YouTube, and those are always in the top trending. And then, of course, all the gamers that move over from, some of them are still on Twitch, but some double up and have it on YouTube and Twitch. But YouTube is trying to be so diverse, but what it actually ends up doing is that it's rightfully so that these things are popular because they are and should be. But I think YouTube is trying to do all of them, and instead what it does is that it loses out on that weird randomness that YouTube was always so well known for, and allowed for people who were very excellent content creators but not necessarily professional, made it harder for them to be discovered.
Yes. Yeah, and I think I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. It has really you can't even really call it saturated, because there aren't really that many big channels. There are a lot, but not as many as it's not like watching cable TV. You don't have 500 channels to choose from. There's maybe, I'd say at most, 50 major channels that get watched regularly on YouTube worldwide. Maybe 100. But it's not like cable, where literally almost 1,000 channels now we're up to of content that's out there. And I think part of it too, though, is I think we've also come to a point where, and both YouTube and Facebook are very good examples, where it's not just the content creators themselves that are looking for other venues to move their work to, but I think it's also the viewership itself. I think we have kind of come to a point where people are looking for the next YouTube. They want something new and different that's not YouTube. They want something new and different that's not Facebook. Especially like Facebook's a big one. Facebook's been getting a lot of flack from people over probably the past 2 years, especially.
Right.
And it is, but there's nothing else to replace it with. It used to be at one point in time that we could expect something new like that to come along like every 4 or 5 years or so.
Right.
Some sort of new social media platform or some sort of new video service. You remember Break.com? It's still around.
Yeah.
But I remember when Break was still a popular channel. Now I don't think I've ever been on there, and I can't even remember.
It's easily been probably a good 7 or 8, 9 years since I visited Break.
Easily.
But that goes back to what we were talking about, where they've diversified so much that it's both a help and a hindrance. You can't break into competing with Facebook and YouTube unless you are planning on doing all of the things YouTube does, and doing it extremely well.
Or better.
Yeah. And
basically have to do it better in order to outdo
yeah,
them. You know?
and you can certainly take one thing and do it better. Like you can look at Spotify; they do music streaming better than Google does with YouTube. Or you can look at Twitch, and they arguably do gaming live streaming better. And those audiences certainly follow there, but there isn't another venue for indie filmmakers, for kind of random people just making videos. There's not that separate, specialized, venue in the same way that there is for music and live streaming, gaming, and for TV.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose a more pertinent question would be, should we even be looking into it? I mean, I think we should, obviously, because I'm a big fan of progressing forward, and I do think it has come to a point where something new would be appreciated and could be nice to have around. But do you think that we should even be trying to pursue that at this point, or should we be putting more stock or faith in something like YouTube and Facebook? Should we just be demanding more change?
Yeah, for indie filmmakers, YouTube is just another tool in the same way your camera is or your sound is. You can put stuff out there, but what you have to do is you have to follow through with marketing towards the people who are going to be most interested in what you are giving them. Because it's not enough anymore for people to just throw up a video and call it good. There are some amazing short films out there that are one-offs. People will spend years on a one-off short film, and they'll, within a matter of an hour or two, their video will disappear into the depths of the internet because they didn't put anything towards marketing it towards anyone. They didn't get it out to somewhere where people will find it, because YouTube is not the place to find those things now. You have to be referred to YouTube from somewhere else.
Yeah, which is an issue that we ran into.
Yeah.
With pretty much most all of our videos is that we're just trying to find a home for them to get people to go to YouTube.
So like I said, I mean, YouTube is not the platform anymore. It's just a tool more than anything else. And you can certainly even use YouTube to have all the content there. But if you look at something like Channel Awesome, the Nostalgia Critic, they have all their content there, but that's not their main platform. Their main platform is their website, where they can engage directly with their fans in a more personal way and more tailored to the interests and needs of their fans. Which is not necessarily something you can do on YouTube, because YouTube is a total free-for-all.
Yeah. Well, I think those are some very good points. I'm going to go ahead and end the discussion there for tonight, because we've gone on for quite a while.
It's good.
I just want to make sure we say
do you want to bring Keith back on to say words and things, or
does Keith want to come back on to say words and things?
Because I did not mean to dominate the discussion. Keith should.
No, that's all right. I was kind of chatting with him before. He just wasn't sure what to say. He's.
Well, I'd like to hear his thoughts on kind of what I had mentioned, like some of the things about YouTube being a tool and stuff like that, just to kind of get the A and B of things. So.
All right. Well, that sounds good.
Because you had some great counterpoints as well, but I'd just like to hear him chime in.
This to answer Jake's question really quickly. This is the first time that Magic Time Films has done our live stream. Tonight was the experimental video. The main experiment was to see how many people we could get on with the video. Apparently, only 2. Apparently, that's only possible for 2, which is fine.
Now. We're up to 4.
Well, I mean the video wise.
Oh yeah.
We only have 2 people streaming video at the same time. So the plan, though, and I was going to get to this on the outro. In fact, I'll go ahead and I'll get Keith back on here really quickly.
Okay.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
We'll hopefully have you back again in the near future.
Toodles.
Toodles, he says. Bringing Keith back online, y'all.
I don't care if he's
And
still
there he
moving.
is.
Shoot him again. Oh, hi.
So, what I was going to say, Jake, is that our plan is to do this more often. We're actually going to, I'll do that really fast because I was going to discuss the new format a little bit. The new format for Magic Time Films basically is that we're trying to simplify a few things, and as well as experiment with the idea of doing Facebook Live videos, and instead of doing a bunch of videos for YouTube. This video will go to YouTube as well, but it won't be live. They're going to get the sort of semi-edited, probably not edited version of this video. But the basic idea being that we just wanted to try something new and simplify things. Because really, we would like to focus more on, hello, Jeremy. We would like to focus more on the filmmaking aspects of things. We want to make more short films, more sketches, things like that. There's still going to be the web series. Things like Larry and the Monsters are not necessarily going away, but I definitely want to focus more on making more movies and getting those out there and getting those made. And doing the live stream would be like our regular show that would be ongoing every Sunday, and hopefully even have special guests on, kind of like having Justin on. And we could do interviews. I've talked with a couple people about doing interviews. I don't want to say any names, but some of them do indie movies and have done quite a few of them.
Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese.
Who knows? One of these days, that could be it. Although I don't know about Coppola.
Yeah, he's an old man. He'll probably be dead soon.
Sure. I think, but that's the basic gist of it. Is that we kind of want to do this as an ongoing thing, and we're going to probably combine our review show, Melcher's Movie Madness, with this as well. Maybe I'm starting to consider the idea of maybe just doing this every Sunday and using Melcher's Movie Madness as an occasional show, as opposed to like a constant ongoing thing. We'll still do the show one way or the other. Either that, or we'll just, like I said, integrate it directly into this live stream, and it'll be one of the opening segments of the show. And hopefully we'll be able to eventually get to a point where we advance, where we have multiple segments, and the ongoing discussion will hopefully have more people involved with the discussion, and we can drop people in and out of this of the discussion at will. For the most part, since I'm the host, I don't think it will let me drop myself out. So basically, Keith gets to be dropped every time we have a guest.
Whatever, I'm used to it by now.
But only because they won't let the host drop out. Otherwise, I would happily step aside there. We still need to do a Melcher's Movie Madness of 3,000 Miles to Graceland. Yes, we do. I think that will definitely have to be a more traditional Melcher's Movie Madness episode as well.
Sure.
And we should do it soon. We should do it very soon. But that does remind me, I do have the review for RoboCop is coming. Finally.
How does the RoboCop theme song go again, Ryan?
What was that?
How does the RoboCop theme song go again?
I don't want to talk about it. But really quickly, because Justin was curious, we wanted to go back to the discussion really quickly and get your thoughts on what we had just talked about, Mr. Melcher.
I have no faith in YouTube anymore as far as getting our videos across. As shown with everything we post, we get very little views, and I don't like it anymore.
Yeah. It is kind of a tough sell for me these days, and especially with all the new criteria that was put in place, making it harder. It's, and there were other criteria before that got on my nerves a lot more than the more recent criteria. We had 2 videos that were actually flagged that I didn't even realize until after the more recent criteria changes. But back, I think it was maybe last year or a couple of years ago, there was this big fiasco between AT&T and Verizon where they got mad because there were kids watching adult content on YouTube, and because parents were complaining. And because all these parents were complaining because they're not watching their fucking children
Mm-hmm.
and paying attention to what they're doing, they made a big stink about it to AT&T and Verizon, and so in turn AT&T and Verizon got on YouTube's case about the videos that are monetized, and they didn't want AT&T and Verizon did not want to support any videos that were horror movies or had any kind of gore or excessive swearing. And I mean, they've always had rules concerning sexual content and stuff like that. But basically, any kind of intimacy now, even if it's just a kiss, if it goes on for 2 seconds too long and somebody complains enough about it, they'll flag your video. So one episode of Larry and the Monsters, I believe episode 2, was flagged. And it was still monetized, but it was limited advertisements.
Was it flagged for the language?
Yes, the F-bombs. Apparently, that would be my assumption anyway. It was the language. And then Nayar got flagged, probably because of the scene between Gino and Alexa.
Oh yeah.
Which showed close to nothing. Really.
I've seen way worse on YouTube than that.
Yeah, as have I. But we got flagged on that one as well. But the criteria that they use, that's the part that's bullshit, because basically it doesn't even have to be a gory horror movie. What they look for are the tags, and that's how your video gets flagged. So if you use tags in your video like horror, gore, or monsters, or specific monsters like vampires, whatever, then it sends out that it pings, and if it gets pinged enough, then you get flagged just for having that particular kind of content. So it's basically a form of censorship, essentially. And you're not allowed to make money, or at least not as much money on those videos because of the content.
Well, and since we were making no money on them as it is, we basically owe them money now.
Basically. In a strange sort of way, that's almost true. Yeah.
I don't like YouTube.
You dirty rotten fuckers.
Cocksucker. Don't go fucker.
You censored yourself.
Yeah.
Never censor yourself. Fuck censorship.
That's right.
Wouldn't it be great if there was somebody who just like followed you around all day and like with a little button that made the beeping sound whenever you'd cuss? I'd probably punch that guy in the face, actually.
My conversation would be just one steady beep the entire time. Not just for the words, for the subject matter.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you would get censorship just for saying anything, really. But, yeah. Any more thoughts, Mr. Melcher?
No.
No.
It's after 8 o'clock. My brain usually shuts down about 7:30 every night, so.
There's an idea for Larry and Vampire short.
Yes, that would, yeah.
Vampire follows Larry around with a censored beaver.
That would be good. That'd be a good one, actually.
I like that idea. Yeah. We might have to run with that one. Anyway, now that we've got 6-7 viewers, now we're going to leave. Because this video's gone on for quite a while now. I do appreciate everybody that showed up. I hope next weekend we might have a special guest. I don't know yet. I don't want to make any promises. I'm definitely looking into it, though. And with any luck, that'll happen. But we will have a movie review for next weekend. Yes, that's right. But yeah, hopefully next weekend we'll have an even bigger audience, and we'll go from there. Don't forget to head on over to our YouTube page, or channel, excuse me, and like and subscribe to the channel. Also, Patreon. That's a big one. You can head over to Patreon and help support our art. Like I said, you can donate as little as $1. That's all it takes. Other than that, hopefully we'll have Dead End ready for you soon. Anything else that you'd like to add, Mr. Melcher?
Bone Jangles is still available on video on demand, Amazon, Vudu, Redbox. Go see it. It's not
Rent
the worst
it,
movie you'll
watch
ever
it,
see.
love it. Bye, folks.
Yeah, bye.